recording. Thank you for that.
Okay. Awesome. So now just to kind of go back, we're talking about how in SASS, one of the really cool parts is once I define a class in my, for example, typography partial, everywhere I use that class name, I now have access to this styling and I've just written it once. Okay. That is like a key feature to why SASS is so amazing, right? Because I'm able to reuse this heading primary as many times as I need it across as many pages of HTML, or when you get to React, those types of things, you'll have multi-page websites just like Rails, and you can do it in Rails too. I will be honest and say it's been a really long time since I touched a Rails project. And it was a really fun run down memory lane for me, trying to remember how to use ERB. But we got there, folks. So I'll show you a little thing I put together at the end of my workday. But again, the really cool thing is that I'm able to reuse this heading primary as many times as I want and give it styling, this styling here. The next cool thing about using the BEM, the block element modifier, right, is what I've done here is I've given this heading primary what we call a modifier, denoted by these 2 slashes, okay? These 2 slashes, if I now use them in my HTML file, which I'll show you is massive because this is purely HTML and CSS, I can now use this modifier here to modify the styling of this particular instance of this class name, okay? So we go back into our SASS, and please stop me, I'm rambling, so stop me if you have questions, please, just don't let me keep going, okay? Because I will.
Quick question, Jordan. So this typography page, it's called in the main SASS as like in a partial format, or?
So this is how you import into the main SASS file. And what this file is doing is it's basically taking all of this junk, not junk, really well-written CSS, excuse me, and it's taking it and it's saying, okay, I'm going to compile this into what you're used to seeing, which is your massive style sheet that gets to be 400 lines long very quickly. It compiles it all for you. So for example, I have here all my variables that I use throughout the project. So all my colors that I want to be able to use. Okay. So I can now, instead of putting this 55C, 57A everywhere throughout my project, I can just put color primary. So now if I decide I hate this color green, I only change this color green in one place. I don't have to Control F through my entire project to find this color green and miss it in that one spot, and it looks super funky and it's too late to change it because you're already in code review, right? You change it in one spot. And it makes everything really clean and really manageable. And what this main.scss file is doing, right, is it's taking all those variables, all those pieces of code, and it's compiling it into what you are accustomed to seeing. And let me see if I can actually find that, what the actual file looks like.
And are the color variables called in the typography file, or is there a separate file that?
There's a variables partial right here. So in the abstracts we have, and I'm going to send you guys the 7-in-1 architecture. I'll send it to Nikki and he can send it out to you. It has all of these different, they're like conventional names for SASS files. And I have some blogs that are written more for React, but still have all this information in them. So if you just ignore the React parts or use them later, that'd be great. But yeah, so it's in this variables file. And the other cool thing about this variables file is I can define anything as a variable. Okay. So if I realize I'm using margin of 1 rem everywhere throughout my project, it's like the margin I'm using the most, I can just declare it my default margin, right? And so instead of writing 1 rem everywhere across my project, I'm just writing default margin throughout the project. And I can't state this enough. It makes it so much easier. If you need to change that 1 rem to 1.2 rem, you just do it once. Okay, that's like the huge thing. You just have to do it once rather than going through your entire CSS file and changing it in 40 places. So to show you what it actually looks like at the end, I think I found it and then lost it promptly after. This is the compiled CSS. This is all the CSS in all those files compiled together. All of the space is taken out, everything put in there. There are all my colors showing up now. So it does this all under the hood for you. And the cool thing about SASS is that Rails comes with SASS right out the box. So when you make your next fun project, you'll see that, let's see, am I sharing my whole screen now? Good. I hope you guys can see I'm shopping for a new, new light plate covers. So I just threw this together because it was going poorly for me in the ERB, but can everyone see this cat fan club code here? Nikki, if you guys didn't know, Nikki really loves to talk and really discuss Cats 2019, the musical. His favorite cat is the railway cat, I believe, if I have that correct.
I switched between Skimbleshanks and Monkey Strap, but yes.
Okay, is Monkey Strap the railroad guy?
Skimbleshanks is the railway cat, yeah.
Right, of course. I didn't include him in the project intentionally. So what I've done here is I just used what came out the box. So if you open up your Rails project right now and you used a generator, I scaffolded, shame on me. Okay, don't shame me. I know you guys are in Rails and that's like a big no, but if you go into your current Rails project, in your assets folder, you will see a style sheets folder. It's not going to have these abstracts or anything in them, but it is going to have some kind of scaffold SCSS unless you like opted for no SASS. So it comes out the box. It comes with SASS built in. Okay. And so you have the ability to just start writing SASS code directly in here, or you have the ability to do what we were just seeing in that larger scale project and then importing it into your main.scss. Okay. So I have this cats file that defines all of the styling for our shabbily made fan club for cats, as it deserves, a shabby site. And I'm using those same things we just saw before, right? So we have our color variables, we have our BEM syntax, where I am defining in the ERB a card, which is our block. And then each thing within it, we give an element, and then we can then modify with those two dashes. And what this does, it allows us to make our nesting look really nice and clean. If you see here in stupid Zoom bar, sorry, excuse me. In my SCSS, you'll see that I have a cat, like a card, and within each card, I'm now nesting. So I'm nesting this header because, wow, I did something horrible. Excuse me. Nikki, you're really good at this. Okay. So inside of my card, I have my card and I use the ampersand to denote that I'm nesting and I'm reusing that class name of card underscore underscore header. So if you look here in the ERB, we have card underscore underscore image, card underscore underscore header. Now I'm able to nest that and I use the ampersand to say, hey, this is basically like saying dot card underscore underscore header. But instead of having to retype the word card because we're really lazy, we just want to put and so we're able to keep it all clean. And my, as everyone knows, this is one of my biggest issues. Tabbing is not great, but yes, so we're able to nest everything under there. Does everyone kind of understand what nesting is, or do I need to go into that like a little bit more? Because I'm pretty sure I just rambled through that.
Nesting is just really crazy.
Yeah, it can be. What is the craziest thing about it?
You got me.
Okay, so basically what we're doing is we're saying within this card, all of these things belong to the card. And so that's how you can determine what is to be nested. So for example, let's take a look at this.
Can I try explaining it?
Go for it.
So I believe she so go back to the code. Okay, so you know how you create classes in like for CSS, right? She's pretty much calling out that specific class, and she's pretty much creating a width, height, background color, and basically all this other stuff to that specific class in the CSS file, right? I hope I'm right.
100%. So I have a card class here, and I want to give that card class I want to give that card class all of this styling. Okay. But within that card, right? Within that card, I also have a card header, right? Which would be the cat's name. I have a card subheader, which is what I've deemed as the title of said cat. And then I have an image of the cat, a description, and some links that came with the scaffolding. Okay. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying all of these, this header, this subheader that they're sitting on the card. So you can see here. So I'm saying these things all belong to a card itself. Okay. So I'm going to nest this card header and this card image within, right? Nikki loves the cats. I've just broken Nikki with the cat. I'm going to nest the header, and I'm going to nest the image. I'm going to nest the header. I'm going to nest the subheader under the card class because they all are associated. Is that a little bit more clear?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And again, happy to like walk through it again, but basically this div, this card div holds all of these other things, and therefore I can nest the things underneath that card class.
I have another way of like thinking about it. Kind of
Okay.
like think of it like, you know how you're let's go back to CLI, right? In that CLI, I forgot the bin folder, where we're pretty much doing everything in the terminal. You're pretty much calling out that class to run. So let's say you want to do a loop, you call that specific class or the method that you created, and you're calling that in the method. Hope I'm making sense.
It's been even longer since I did CLI, so I remember it, sure, but I can't help on that one. But the benefit of doing it this way is that everything is really clean. So I am typing less, which we love. I'm keeping things organized. And more importantly, when another developer comes in, they can clearly see that these things are associated because these images, the header, the subheader, the rating description are all nested within this card class. So another developer can come in and read your CSS, your SASS code and say, okay, I get it. This is all belonging to this cat card, right? Which is super, super important, especially as you enter like your career. Readability. People are going to read your code all of the time. It's terrifying, even to this day. So people are going to do that. So the clearer that it reads, the better off and the more successful you'll be going forward. That's one of the benefits of using the block element modifier syntax when you're class naming, even if you're not using SASS. Okay. And I'll send out more information about BEM. The docs are really great about the BEM method for class naming. And I'll give Nikki that information as well. but I'm like super happy to like, you are all welcome to message me sometimes. I can't promise I'll answer all the time, but if you have questions, I'm more than happy to like clarify anything, walk through something. Please feel free to ask me anything. But yeah, that's kind of my like big thing on why SASS. It also comes, like I said, right out of the box with Rails, which I did not know when I was in Flatiron. Not that I don't know that I would have used it. I was like big on Bootstrap when I was in my Rails project. But it is a game changer. I wish more places used it because of how clean and organized it can be. And I got really obsessed with that. Does anybody have any questions?
How did you first learn SASS? Did you learn it after
Nikki?
boot camp or like did
Yeah,
you?
in boot camp. Nikki basically forced me to learn it. Yeah, that's exactly how that went down. No, I reached out to Nikki after I had done a project in Bootstrap and I was kind of starting to get more intrigued by front end development. And there was another person in our cohort, Kyle, who was also extremely obsessed with like figuring out how to make weird stuff happen on the front end. And Nikki was like, I think your next step would be looking into something like a precompiler like SASS. And so, you know, seeing I didn't have any other information on where to go with that. So I just said, sure, I'll start looking at the docs. The SASS docs are absolutely wonderful. They also talk about BEM and 7-in-1 architecture. I think I have them pulled up here. I can escape VS Code. Yeah. So the SASS docs are really, really good. I know Nikki will tell you to look at the docs all the time. But there's a whole guideline section here that walks through syntax and formatting, naming conventions, architecture. I didn't pull these from a lot of different places. It's all right here on their website. What they think is the best practice, how to do it. They're opinionated. I think it's like their byline is like that their SASS is sassy CSS or something like that. But yeah, so it goes through all the architecture. Like you can scroll through and it has different options for you. The 7-in-1 pattern is the one that I gravitated toward just because it's so broken up, and everything is super cleanly labeled. This is fantastic. But yeah, so this is an example of a full 7-in-1 architecture for a production level project. Everything is broken out. You have layout components. So your navigation bars is all your SASS for your nav bar is in one file. All your header information, your footer information is in one specific file. And all of those are then imported into that main file. And SASS does all the heavy lifting under the hood, pre-compiles all that into your regular style sheet. But yeah, the SASS docs are really, really awesome. I'm down to answer questions about this. I'm down to answer questions about where I work, what I do. I recruited my friend Mex. They're super awesome. They're also a developer. So we're down to answer questions, SaaS related or CSS related or front-end development related or current career related. So go for it, Naomi. I'm into it. You're quick.
So like, okay, I'm the person that hates CSS.
Mhm.
And I wonder, like, did you hate it? And like, I mean, what was your strategy in like liking CSS? Like, actually like designing it? Because I absolutely hate it.
So I'm gonna toss that to Mex here in a second because I think that that's more their thing. I never hated it. I wasn't good at it, and when I was going to Flatiron, this is my joke. I use it in interviews. Feel free to steal it. I kept making projects and showing them to my parents, knowing that I put in like a shit ton of work. Excuse my language, and they were like, "This is great." But like I've seen better websites everywhere. Like this looks like 1990s chic. And I was tired of them not understanding how great it actually was and how much hard work I put in. And I'm an adult, like a full blown, like adult and I still want my mom and dad to think my stuff is cool. So I'm no shame in my game. So I was like, I'm going to figure this out. I want my final project. I want to come out of here and I want my final project to look like it belongs on the internet today, not with like Space Jam, like the original Space Jam website. And so that was my motivation. So I guess maybe find your motivation. The other thing that I got really into was actually using like Sketch and Figma. So I would do like full wireframes, full designed wireframes of my projects. And then, well, I'd spent 2 hours wireframing it. So I wasn't not going to get my project to look like that. Right. So it forced me to make my CSS skills improve because I had spent so much time, quote unquote, designing something exactly how I wanted it. I was going to put in the effort to make it look that way. But my friend next, they also don't love CSS, so they may be a better person to answer this question.
Yeah, I still don't really like CSS, but I am learning to embrace it because at my place of employment right now, I am responsible for making several different components for the production level app that we're building for a client. And that means the senior developers are handling all the back end work, and I have to make everything look pretty and do it how our senior designer made it. And so I never learned Figma the way Jordan did. And that might have been somewhat helpful, but I don't have to do anything with Figma. I just have to take the designs from the designer and build it out. And the great thing about having a designer is that if I make things and like try to like get by with like, good enough, she'll point it out and say like, that color blue is 2 shades too light. And this is 3 pixels too far to the right or left. And so she has really forced me to up my styling game. And as part of it, I suppose, is that I'm embracing it and like starting to like it because it's what I'm being paid to do right now. And yeah, I don't know if there's anything more to say about it other than that.
All right, who's up next? Momo, am I saying that correctly? Okay, awesome.
Yes. Hi. So it's not a question regarding SASS specifically, but like, how did you learn? Like, did you always have an eye for design, or is there something you used to help you learn? Because like, I tried using CSS and like websites before, but like sometimes it felt like I went a little bit overboard, and sometimes I felt like I didn't know what to focus on. So, is there any way that like you learned to like what to prioritize design wise, or how to make something look really professional or really nice?
It took a while. Like my first couple projects were busier. I was like, a white background, no, that I can't just have a white background. It's boring. I spent a lot of time. There are a ton of really, really nice design friendly sites that you can go to that show you like trending designs, things like that. I can send those things to Nikki. Let me see if I have them bookmarked still. But there are a lot of tools to figuring out how to like what you need to do. I just really started studying those things as much as possible. So by the time I got to my final project, I was cleaning things up a little bit and being okay with simplicity. I think that's a big thing is like it's hard to be like this page is so like you want it to pop and you want it to look really cool and you want things to like spin around, but like the end of the day, you have to think accessibility, you have to think about cleanliness, and you have to think about like what are you seeing on the internet right now, right? If you go to Nike, if you go to like large sites, sure, there's a lot of busyness, right? There's a lot of advertisement, but overall, like there are standard design practices for large H1s. There's standard design practices for subtext. Like you shouldn't use sans serif if it's not body text, right? You should use a serif font, nothing with feet, right? So it just was me reading and studying while I was at Flatiron, just trying to figure out how can I make this thing look impressive, because it was my React project, so I knew it was the one that everyone was going to be looking at because I wanted a front end React position. So I knew that it was the thing that was going to be my showcase piece. And two, again, you know, dear old mom and dad, right? But I will get those resources. I have them bookmarked. I'm just like, you know, forgetting how to use a computer right now because I'm in front of all of you. But I will send those out to Nikki as well.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Josh?
Yeah, so I just had a question, like, how do you start a project? And to me, CSS is like a thing that I just start collecting it, and then I just have this trash bag of things at the end.
So I too, I understand your trash bag, right? It takes a lot of practice, especially I think the key for me was starting to design first. And when you're in your career, right, you won't have to design. Okay. So if you're a front-end engineer, someone will be designing for you. I use Figma. It's a free tool. Of course, I'm not logged in. But it helped me keep my CSS really, really clean because I knew exactly what I wanted to do. What happens as we're building something without a plan, right? Without a plan, you're starting, okay, I'm going to style this. It's going to be blue. I think the theme is going to be blue. If you build this out beforehand, you set up your theme, you set up everything, your color scheme, everything beforehand, you have a game plan going forward because CSS can be so messy. That's one of the reasons why SASS is so cool. But it also keeps you accountable with your CSS. I'm trying to get my Figma up and running here. Let's see. Yeah, so this was my React landing page here. So I designed this before I started my actual project. I never touched the code before until I was done with this, and I sent this to Nikki. So I had a landing page here, or a hero. Oh, shoot. My bad, guys. And then this is the entirety of that page, right? It was completely designed all the way down to, now it wasn't designed like what words were going to be there, what the logos were going to look like, but I had the layout of my page, the colors, everything set up before I started coding, right? That kept my CSS like much cleaner than any of my other projects had been. But yeah. Does that answer your question, Josh? Does that help? You're muted, bud.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Raquel, I don't want to get it wrong. Sorry.
Yes, Raquel.
Awesome.
How would you say that SASS is intuitive when you're first starting out to learn it?
It's not.
Oh.
That's what yeah, sorry. It's not. I know Mex could probably speak to that. It's not. It took a lot of like going back to this guideline, reading different articles. I did a SASS course, like I did an advanced CSS course towards the end of my time at Flatiron, because I was like, okay, I've got the basics down, but now I want to be able to, you know, do animations and all that kind of stuff. So it took me probably 6 months to get comfortable writing in SASS. Not to say that I couldn't write in SASS in a month, but I was not writing SASS quickly. It took a lot of thought and a lot of planning and a lot of Googling, all the time, guys. Don't be afraid. I Google something literally every 10 minutes at my job. So yeah. Josh, is your hand up with a new question? Okay.
Sorry.
Naomi?
So I'm very curious because, well, I have two questions. So one, what do you do? Like, what's your company that you work for? And two, what does like, how does it look? Oh my gosh, I cannot speak. Like, what does every day look like?
Absolutely. So I
Yeah,
work
they-
for a place called knock.com, which I'm not wearing my shirt today, so I can't really speak to this, but Nikki laughs because he says we're like a cult. because we're all wearing blue in all of our LinkedIn stuff. But I work here, and basically my everyday is I'm currently like one of the tech leads on all of the website updates.
Show them
so
your first assignment.
which one?
Your
This
very
footer?
first one.
This my very first one was this right here. Guys, look at that. I made that link, y'all. That's right. That was my whole first ticket. And watch, it doesn't work. No, just kidding. Okay. My first, which one was my first page? I don't remember. I've redone a lot of these pages now. Oh, I remember now. This was my first page that I redid for knock.com. So like I was talking to, I think it was Momo, about like very clean, very simple, not a ton of anything going on, but this is the kind of industry standard, very clean. But yeah, this was my first page. I don't have my work computer up right now. I'm using my personal computer, but basically I start my day, I look at what's called a Jira board, which shows what different tickets we're working on, which are assigned to me or to other engineers. And I literally just complete the tickets. What's cool about where I work right now is, even as a entry-level engineer, I have a ton of responsibility, and I get to sometimes stressfully produce a lot. I literally today got like produced an entire page in a day yesterday. So it's awesome. It's stressful. I think there's different environments for every developer, and I think that's really key. Like, don't compare yourself to anyone else. But yeah, my day to day is honestly just coding and meetings. Like, that's it. Coding and meetings, lots of meetings about coding. Raquel, did that answer you, Naomi? I'm sorry.
Yes, but I have another question. But Raquel can go.
Okay, Raquel, let's hear you.
What languages do you work in?
So yeah, so this is why Rails was so hard for me, because I haven't used it in a long time. I actually work in React, and our backend is Node.js, and I interact frequently with GraphQL. So I did not have any GraphQL experience before taking this job. So I had to learn that on the job, i.e. Google. Google taught me everything I know about GraphQL. But yeah, it's just, it's mostly, I code in React. I can't show you guys the repository. Let me see. I can kind of show you how big it is, but I can't show you the actual code. These are all 4 different repositories. Each one holds probably over 150 files each. So did that answer your question, Raquel?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Naomi?
Okay, so when you got when you applied for the job and you had the interview, how was like the live coding process was like?
With Knock, it was awesome. It was one of the reasons that I gravitated towards this job. I had other live coding experiences, none of which went poorly at all. However, this one was the most comfortable and collaborative. That is something that to me was like a necessity. My hiring manager was the person I live coded with. He's my current boss. He's the engineering manager of our Slingshot, of our team. And he was like, how would you do this? Oh, okay. You know, it was we were talking as I was coding. I was asking questions. I was like, hey, can I Google that? I don't remember. He was like, sure thing. Or he would give me a suggestion. Most of my live codes went that way. It's a scary thing. It never gets easier. I know Mex can speak to that too. They also had a couple of live codes, and it doesn't ever get easier, but that being said, you get more confident, or at least I can speak for myself and say I got more confident in, okay, I prepared for this as much as I could. It's either going to be a good fit or it's not going to be a good fit. I know what I'm looking for in my hiring manager or the people that I want to work with, and don't be afraid to say no. In this interview, I thought I tanked it multiple times. So I had no idea what the answers to some of the questions were. But instead of BSing them, I was like, I don't know the answer, but I can find it. And they've been super transparent about the hiring process post. And that was one of the things that they appreciated, because they would rather someone not be afraid to ask the question. They want someone to ask questions rather than be prideful and like wait and take up 6 hours of dev time trying to figure out something that someone could have helped them solve in 2 minutes. Right? Does that answer your question on that?
Yeah. Do you remember what you had to do?
Yeah. So I was given, for this live code, I was given a like a repository that they use for their live code with the questions. But I had to then code out the solution in front of the hiring manager. But I got to run through it once before I did it. They knew that they were hiring a junior. He asked me a lot of questions while I was doing it. Okay, why are you making that choice? Why are you structuring your files that way? And when you get to React, Nikki, we'll talk about thinking in React. But why are you choosing to structure your files that way? Those kinds of questions. So things you couldn't necessarily prepare for just by coding the solution out. That was mostly that experience. Max, do you have anything you want to share about your experience live coding?
Yeah, sure. I had a lot of similar experiences with having to do some live code with various amounts of information presented to me beforehand about what I would be doing. And the place where I ended up being hired, their live code was going into it. I knew that I would be able to choose what language I would be able to write it in. And I knew that it would have something to do with strings and sorting. That was what I was told. And so I was saying, great, it's going to be like some really tough algorithm, like on LeetCode or something. And it turned out not being all that bad. It was technically an algo, but I was coding with one of the senior engineers on my team, and he was super helpful. It was really very, very collaborative. So if I got stuck, I would just kind of talk out loud about what my thought process was, and he would either agree or say, well, what about this? And I actually ended up completing and solving the algorithm I had an hour, and we had about 20 minutes to just chat afterwards, which was really nice.
Heck yeah, you did.
But so I didn't really want to be at a place that was like super emphatic about algorithms, but it wasn't like one of those insanely hard ones. And because of the collaborative environment, I really like to just the way in which it was presented. It was actually one of my favorite interviews that I went through.
Oh my God, y'all, I'm so terrible. I just noticed that there were 34 chat messages. Did I miss anything important? Number one. Number two, if I missed your question, please let me know and I will answer it. Now I'm reading the chat. Raquel, I saw your hand up first, so you're up next.
Yeah, so during the interview process, when the person that was interviewing you asked if you knew, I forgot which framework you didn't use before you got the job, but how did you answer that question when you never used it before?
Yeah, twofold on that. So he did ask, and I said, nope, I've never used it before. But I also didn't know JavaScript 2 months ago. So I'm confident that I can pick this up. And I'm also like not afraid to ask you if I don't understand how to do it. And I'm not afraid to ask how can you help me implement it the first time? Can you walk me through this? Can you send me the proper documentation in the current repository that you guys use? So yeah, twofold. I used the fact that I had gotten through a boot camp to show them that obviously I can learn things quickly, and that I can Google it basically, and I can figure it out. And also in saying that I'm not cocky. I'm also just willing to ask the questions I need to ask to get it done. And that was just how I approached boot camp that way. No shame in my game. I'm like, if I don't know it, I'm gonna ask it. There's no point in me sitting here for 3 hours, man. Like,
Thank you.
did you have something, Nikki? You unmuted.
Yeah, Ryan's just been raising his physical hand for a while, and I want to give his arm a rest. I don't think he knows how to react to raise
Sorry,
hand.
I didn't see your physical hand. Go ahead, Ryan. I'm sorry.
No problem. I've got a couple questions actually. Sorry. At what point during your time at Flatiron did you feel like you were ready to start applying for jobs? How much extra stuff would you suggest we like? It seems like you went above and beyond the curriculum a bit, and from the sound of it, a lot of the people in this cohort are doing the same thing, which makes me nervous. Yeah, at what point do you think someone is generally ready to start going out there and trying to apply?
So first thing, don't compare, because that's like the number one thing. We all do it, and it makes us all feel really crappy about ourselves, right? You are doing exactly what you need to be doing. This is super, super hard. Getting through Flatiron is not easy. It was like, I think I cried like maybe 150 times, like once a morning, just like when I realized I had to do it again that day. So you're good. I literally did not start applying for jobs until I had graduated. I had zero energy while I was in the program to apply for jobs. One of our cohort mates, Brittany, she was applying for jobs like in Rails, right? She was always that way. Like, she was just ready to go. Like, I was not ready to go. I was terrified. I was terrified when I graduated. I was like, what now? Oh, wait. The whole point of this, which is to go get a job. Like, I was like, can I do this whole thing over again? I'm comfortable with that now. Let me go back to this other thing that I'm familiar with. So I literally started applying mid-December, and I got my offer in March. So if that gives you a timeline, that's not everyone's timeline. Some people have longer timelines. Some people have shorter timelines. Like, it really is just depends. With regard to like extra stuff, Mex and I paired almost every day, if not every day, just because it made it easier to do things when you're doing things with other people rather than like feeling like you're alone. Maybe that's not for everyone, but like they and I paired every single day, especially towards the end. And we did side projects because it made it easier for us to tackle new things because we weren't like suffering in silence on our own. But yeah, does that answer question number one, Ryan?
Yeah, it did. And it also made me feel a little bit better. So thank you for that.
Good.
Also, just I'm kind of trying to grasp, like, I know you already went through your day-to-day and the ticket, responding to tickets, but just like as a front-end developer, particularly if you work for like a singular employer, like, and you're not really like a contractor working on multiple sites, how is there that much work to constantly be done to one product? Like, I'm just trying to wrap my head around that.
Yes, you've nailed like my number one fear. When do I become obsolete? It's never ending. So like I said yesterday, right, I got a whole landing page thrown on me, and they were like, cool, can we have this by Friday? Right. This was a product that did not exist 3 days ago. it's a new thing. Our CEO is like, let's do this new thing and give everyone $5,000 if we don't close in 30 days. And let's make it a value prop. And so the rest of us are like, okay, cool. So there's always going to be iterations. There's always going to be changes. We have mobile apps, right? We have a consumer dashboard where people can go. Basically what Knock does is it allows you to, I'm not going to do the whole like what we were taught, but like basically it allows you to like sell your house without selling it. So like you can move into your brand new house and then Knock helps you fix up your old house that you own, like your owned home. And then they help you sell it. So you don't have to wait, because right now the market is super crazy and you can't wait to buy a house and you need to unlock your equity. Okay, I'm not going to go into the big spiel about Knock. It's a cool place to work. But basically we have this dashboard where people can see their loan applications and everything like that. So that needs constant tweaking. We're constantly updating SEO, which is like search engine optimization. We're constantly running experiments. Like if we change the color of this button, do more people click it? So the thing I was worried about, the fear of becoming obsolete and not necessary, I don't see it being a problem the more that I do the work, if that answers that. Momo, I think you were next. Stop. Sorry, my dog is whining.
So I was wondering, I heard that you all went through multiple interviews, but I was wondering, I know that you were looking for a front-end position, but did you ever interview for back-end positions? And was there a big difference in like what the live coding was like for front-end versus back-end? Would you still have to know the same data structures, algorithms, irregardless?
Max is probably better for this question. I will say I applied for a couple full stack roles. Most of them were still React front ends. I did not ever have a strict algorithm interview. I really lucked out. I didn't want to work at a place that wanted me to have to know like leak code 7s or whatever. I don't like algorithms. I'm like open about it. So in interviews and when people are calling me and stuff, I'll try it, but it's not my jam. But if you want me to make the page look the way you want it to look, I can do that. So yeah. But Mex, you had to do algos. You poor soul.
I'm a better back-end engineer than I am a front end. And so I was looking for full stack positions. And I never had to like build a back end for any interviews. But I did have to talk a little bit about how you might structure something. But because I was more full stack as opposed to like looking for a React position, because a lot of React interviews that Jordan had, and I had one, the interview live code would have it set up beforehand. Like they have a small repository and they would say, build this graph with this button and this styling in React. And so that was how a lot of the strictly front end ones would be. And I can't even remember all my interviews, but that's because, okay, now I remember. I had with these full stack ones, there were a lot where I wasn't doing a live code, but they would send an assignment and I would have 2 or 3 hours and I would have to solve 4 different algorithms. And there were a few where I actually got most of the solve and was scoring like 80% on them. But I also ended up not really liking those companies anyway, because I wasn't interviewing with a person. I didn't feel like those types of interviews with the algos really showed what I was capable of. It just happened to be that this was an algo that I just did a couple days ago with Jordan. And that's why I would often be able to solve them. Which is why I did like the full stack interview where I did accept the position, because while it was an algo, I was doing it with a person and I was allowed to use Google as much as I wanted. And with the take-home assignments, oftentimes they would be recording my screen and they'd be like, you can't use Google. And I'm like, what developer doesn't use Google? None of them. So in a way, the interviews that I didn't like or were not particularly good at, they were with companies that I didn't particularly want to work at anyway. So there's definitely a balance to that.
Naomi.
Hey, again. So I also have two questions. So one, like, how do you deal? Okay, so me, I have like major anxiety when it comes down to like explaining my code and live coding and all this. And so, how do you deal with like, how do you lower your anxiety and become more confident in like to show what you can do?
That's super tough. It's always hard. I would literally before reviews, Max and I would get together and talk through every line of our code, and explain to each other what our code was doing. Even though like we had talked about it a million times before, it's just helpful to like go through it. Even if it's like your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, they don't know what you're talking about, for you to just walk through your code line by line was huge for me. And I did it before every review at least maybe 3 or 4 times. I got a lot more confident. And by confident, I mean still super, super nervous. By the time I hit my React review though, I felt like I could be an engineer. I think I had a lot of imposter syndrome up until then, and it hit every time I reviewed. Post that, when you get to the interviews, like I would always tell myself the worst that can happen is this company says no, and then therefore they weren't the company for me, right? Like if they don't like my style or what I bring to the table, like I can't be someone I'm not, right? So that's my piece on that. I don't have like a solution that would probably work for every single person here. I think you have to like keep honing it and practicing, and eventually like it gets better. And it is important to be able to do, because now as an engineer, I have to code with other people. So I'm glad they put me through that at Flatiron, because it's a thing. Max, do you have anything to speak to on that? I know you have that as well.
Yeah, no, I do have anxiety, and I have a combination of test anxiety and just sort of general anxiety. And so then having to like perform for an exam basically in front of a person was absolutely terrifying for me. I cried in my first review, like the CLI one, because I was just so terrified of the whole process. But I actually found all the 5 reviews that I had, each one got progressively better, and I also got better at preparing for them. By the time I got to React Redux, Jordan and I had sort of ironed out this process where we would create a document based on tidbits that Nikki would give us about types of questions that we should be prepared for. And we would Google and make sure that we knew all our answers to those, and how those types of questions would relate directly to our project. And like Jordan said, line by line, say exactly what every piece of code is doing. And if this function calls some other file, we go to that other file and say exactly what it's doing. And that whole process not only helps with some confidence, but it also helps me learn my own code better, because sometimes it was something that I wrote 2 weeks ago and you don't always remember what that was. And then sort of applying that to interviewing, a lot of times companies will have, or either it'll be on their job posting, or you can ask either the recruiter or whoever you're talking to what the interview process will be like. And then I would do as much as I could that was similar to what Jordan and I would do. If I knew what topic, what language it was, or what framework it was, I would review common interview questions related to that, practice writing up code, just like spinning up small projects. Oh, hello puppy. And for the there's a technical interview that Flatiron will actually pay for. I don't remember off the top of my head what company that is. Do you, Nikki or Jordan? Anyway,
No idea. I blocked it out.
but there are like 2 or 3 good blog posts on Medium that I looked at, and people said, this is what my interview experience was, and this is what I had to code. So then I went and I spun up exactly and did that. It had something to do with buttons and showing a list, and I don't remember all off the top of my head, but basically I would try to be as over prepared as possible. And that's how I try to deal with the anxiety of it. And I also do yoga and meditation. If that's your thing,
So healthy.
if that's a thing that you're into, definitely use all the tools in the tool belt that you have. And my dog, Tommy, over here. Say hi, buddy. Yeah.
I have a
Right.
dog. and
Oh,
so-
sorry.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, I have a dog and he helps me with my anxiety. So, yeah.
Awesome. And then Ryan.
So I was wondering, like, after you guys are done with the day, do you guys still like work on your own projects, or you just kind of like, I'm not sitting down in front of a computer when I get home? Like, do you still keep like doing your own thing, or is it just, I don't know if that's an individual question or what?
I want to tell you that I do, but that would be a lie. I have not touched code outside of my job since I started because I am coding. When I said that my day was either coding or meetings, I am coding or in a meeting all day long. So when 6 sometimes hits, that's the last thing I want to do is code. I need to do it. I have it in my planner, and I just keep drawing the little arrow to next week. But so yeah, I'll get back to you on that, Ryan, when I determine if it's ever going to happen for me. Yeah.
Mex, is it generally the same for you, or?
Yeah, I have a list of things. These are things I would like to do in my spare time. I haven't done that. I'm looking at, I have a time card. I'm salaried, but we still keep track of our hours because I work with a small company and we're hired for specific clients. So we actually keep track of how much time we spend on projects for billing purposes. But I spent 5.41 hours today on the particular component that I'm working on. And all the rest of my time, I was either reviewing my teammates' code or in meetings talking about this code. And so that's just so much time on the computer. And I do have some carpal tunnel issues. And I have fancy new keyboard. I have to unplug it, but it's a split keyboard that I've invested in with my work from home allowance, which work also provides, which is awesome.
Heck yeah.
And so once I'm done, I try not to be on the computer, actually. And there's another junior on my team. She doesn't code. She currently doesn't code outside of work either. There's one senior developer. He does gaming coding. So he codes games for fun. That's one of his hobbies. So he does, but it's not directly related to what we do. He codes, his fun code is in a language that we don't ever use for any of the clients. So it's really personal preference. I hope to someday be able to do some personal projects and do some other things, but right now I'm just focused on the job and not burning out.
Thanks.
Naomi, do you have a new question?
Yes.
Okay.
So how long can you be until you're a senior? Like, yeah, how do you be a senior developer? Like, how does that even work?
So depends on where you're working. Max and I are actually having like completely different experiences in our jobs, which is really cool to see. Um, the company that when I was interviewing, it was one of my major questions. I have like a couple of really big dream goals that I really wanted to accomplish, and one of those was like I want to be promoted at 6 months, and I want to be a senior at 1.5 years if possible. And I want to be actually feel like a senior developer. So I want to be given integrations. I want to be tasked with more difficult projects quickly, so that I can kind of like fire hose, just like I did at Flatiron, fire hose, learn as much as I possibly can so that I can be trusted to do the hard stuff. And that's very much the mentality at NOC. So the mentality there is like, yeah, hell yeah, as fast as you can go, we're going to push you. Like they'll overwork you if you don't watch them. Right. Like, cause they just want people who produce, right? It's a small, not small, it's like over 100 people now, but the engineering team is relatively small.
Okay. My company's small, not yours.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, we're more mid-tier, but yeah, so it's as quickly at NOC, it's as quickly as you can show that you meet certain criteria, right? So entry level is high level of supervision, high level of code review, needing a lot of assistance, right? Then the next level under senior is relatively less code review, less supervision while coding, right? And then a senior engineer is able to maintain, do these things. Sorry, you can see my text messages coming in, I'm sure. Stop the screen share as my kid curses at me via text message. Not at me like in a mean way. Sorry, that came off weird, but like curses angrily about her life. Yeah, it's about as fast as I can get good, basically, where I work. Next.
So I work with a company with 6 employees, including the CEO. So we are tiny. And they hired I'm the second junior developer. The other junior was hired in January and started in February. And they've never had juniors before. And they have a rough idea of what their senior expectations are, with a rough idea of we could hit senior level sometime between 1 and 3 years with lots of question marks. So it actually is kind of, for me, that's just fine, because Jordan and I are very different. And I kind of like this attitude of just learn, contribute to the projects. We'll talk at some point about what expectations are. And that just kind of rolls with my vibe pretty well. But I also understand that for a lot of people that would not be acceptable. But so for me, I'm shooting for like 2 to 3 years to hopefully be at the senior level.
I'm a little bit like batty though, y'all. So I'm like, give me the hardest thing that I can possibly handle. I would like to cry trying to implement this, but I'm not going to tell you that because then I sound weird. But like, I want it to be that hard for me. I did that to myself all through Flatiron with every single project. I made it overly complicated. Look, Nikki's shaking his head. He knows. He made it worse, and he knows that as well. But yeah, I would be like, it has to be this overly complex system. So I'm the same. And I think it's just, you have to find your niche on your speed, on how fast you want to go. Raquel?
Yeah. I was just going to add to that, Jordan, that I was kind of like, as good friends as we are, I'm kind of opposite of the spectrum to Jordan with that regard. Like my projects, they did go above and beyond expectations, but I never tried to do like a polymorphic relationship in my database. Not recommended. And so this sort of low key attitude about leveling up and coding, and we write really good, clean code to produce good results for clients, but not necessarily but we aren't a growing company with the idea of we're going to hire 15 more engineers in the next year. Like that's just not a thing. This is probably the only people we're going to hire this year. And we probably won't hire again unless we can hire another senior or until the 2 juniors are at senior level. So it's just totally different types of companies, different expectations. And we both happen to find a place that suits our particular tastes and likes for how we work. I saw a hand up, but then the hand went down.
I think it was oh,
Yes, it was.
Hey.
My question is for Mex. Since you work for such a small company and you're like the second junior developer on the team, were you intimidated at any point through the interview process? Did you question your ability? Like, oh, I'm so fresh. I wonder if I could actually do this. Will they even like me? Will they think that I'm experienced enough? Like, what was your thought process there?
I was actually most excited by this tiny ass company over any other company I was at. And part of that was my final interview. I got to meet everybody on the team and we just had a casual conversation. We didn't even really talk about code. And having done my interview with the senior engineer who I knew at the time if I was hired, he would be doing my onboarding, and because they also work in a language, a framework, and use a CSS library that all 3 of them are brand new to me. I hadn't used any of them. So that was actually even more intimidating than the fact that it was so small. It was that there was going to be this really steep learning curve. But because they were so small, they're also like, we'll be able to teach you, and we're not hiring juniors with the expectation that you immediately start producing lots of code for the client. We're hiring you with the expectation that it's going to take you some time to learn, but we want you to be here for a long time. And that was another thing that I really liked about this particular company, is that it'd be a place that I could grow and really kind of bond with the team. And it's not as culty as Nikki would make you think, but we do play D&D together. And so I do still have sometimes there's a little bit, I always get nervous meeting with Logan. He's the CEO, but he's also the senior developer on the project that I'm working on. And so when I pair with him one-on-one, that sometimes I still get sweaty, but he's really cool. And I know everybody on the team, and we have Slack channels to be like, I need help with this. And it's just been a really great and supportive environment.
Thank you.
Naomi, go ahead.
Okay, I know you hear from me a lot, but this is my biggest concern, through this whole process, because I'm I just graduated out of high school, and so my job search I feel like is very limited because they want people that's over a certain age, and I don't know how that would affect me in looking for a job search for a job. I mean,
Well, I can make you maybe this will make you feel a little bit better. So I was like a social worker before I went to Flatiron. Literally zero crossover. Nothing I could utilize. Maybe the people skills. That's it. That's all I had going for me, is I could say I have people skills. So with just that boot camp education, I was able to break into tech. So I think trust the process. It's not an easy process. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, it's it was tough. And I know I'm speaking for myself. I worked really, really hard at it, and I worked really, really hard when I was interviewing, but you can do it. It's just about taking the time and being kind to yourself throughout the process as much as you can, because it's really easy to get down on yourself and be afraid that it's not going to work out. And if you apply yourself in the job search and you do your career coaching and you thought like you make your LinkedIn look really good and you just keep applying through like all that stuff, it'll happen.
Even if my age is the way it is, like I'm talking about young.
Old for an engineer. I'm over 30.
Okay.
So, you know, I think it's like, I think it's what you make it, right? Like if you carry yourself, like you've asked a ton of questions, like you're not shy, like you want to get the best out of this, like your education at Flatiron, like you go into that, you take that attitude into your workplace. Like age is just a number, you know what I mean? Like if you take your confident, like you're confident, you're asking a ton of questions, you take that into your interviews, you take that attitude, like that go-gettedness and like wanting to learn into your interviews, I think you'll see success.
Jordan, I think we have time for one more question. Then I'm going to make you leave because I know you'll take questions all night because you're very nice.
We can do this again too after you guys get through JavaScript, so I can actually talk to you guys about coding. Because I don't remember a lot of Rails, but I do remember a lot of JavaScript. And but yeah, okay. I think I saw Ryan's hand up, and that'll be the final question of the night.
I just I didn't want to take the final question, but if there's none others, so you guys mentioned like kind of like a burnout aspect. What is there like an average lifespan for an engineer, or like is that typical that people just, because I've heard people get frustrated with just the it's just one project after the next and never ending.
So I'll answer from, I think this is a per person type of thing. Again, I've already described myself as batty. I guess I'll use the word nuts here next. I love it. And I coded way more than necessary when I was in Flatiron because I was literally obsessed with it. So not everyone has to do that. It's not healthy. I should do yoga and things like Mex does. I don't. I just code more. But so I love that there's a new thing every day. And I love that things are getting thrown in my lap and that I have to move quick and that I have to work under pressure and that there's always going to be something new to work on. So I might not be the best person to answer burnout because I'm not there yet. I'm sure I will get there because I just described that I like how hectic my life is. So, you know, that's the beginning of burnout. But yeah, Max, do you have an answer on that?
From what I've read, I've done a lot of reading on Medium about this. There's really a balance that people kind of need to find. And I'll see if I can't find some of those articles and send them on to Nikki. But for me, I know that if I'm all day at my computer, I will burn out. And I actually have had that in my previous job too. And the company I'm with, they're actually pretty conscientious about not overworking the engineers because we have this time card. They can see if we've worked more than 40 hours. And I actually got called out by my CEO privately once. He said, I see you worked 45 hours last week. Like, don't make that a habit. You don't need to do that. And so it really depends on the person, depends on the company. But I think that's some kind of something that you have to kind of do some soul searching on personally for finding that balance. But there are definitely there are engineers out there who have worked 30 years as an engineer. So it's definitely, it can be a long-term career if that's what you want it to be.
And I think the last piece on that is like where Knock does work-life balance really well is I've only been an employee since April. Like that's when I started, beginning of April. And by end of 2021, I'll have taken over 3 weeks vacation. So never in my life before was that a thing. So yeah, I work really hard, but like, they're like, no, take time, don't work. I know you're remote and you can work from that location, but just go to that location and don't pick up your computer. So I think you just have to find your spot, and that's where I'll leave it. That's all I got. But I'm happy to do this again, Nikki.
Amazing. Well, thank you both so much. Max,
I'll drag Max again.
just dropping in last moment too. This was awesome. Thank
I
you.
would have been here on time, but I had a meeting with my CEO. He was asking me about my code and I was explaining it to him. So
I'll send that stuff out to Nikki, and if you guys find me on LinkedIn, just send me a message so that I know where you're.
same. I'm open to LinkedIn connections, but please say how you know me, because if there's no message, I ignore it. So I'm pretty sure Jordan does the same.
I absolutely 100% do. I'm sorry to everyone. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Of course, anytime.
You're welcome.